Hello everyone, I'm Cass, and today I'd like to show you how I decide where I'm going to be spending my talent points. I'm going to be using an add-on to make things easier. It's not strictly required, but the add-on Craftsim is going to summarize the bonuses of each knowledge point node that you can spend points on, and add that summary to the recipe for each item that you're looking at crafting. It's just a very easy way to organize that information. If you're willing to look through each node for each recipe, you're welcome to do so. I prefer to have it summarized for me. With that said, let's get started. So the first thing that I like to do is figure out what items people are in general going to be looking for. To do that, we're going to be going to a website that contains meta information about how people are going to be playing in the end game. To do this, I'm going to go to a data website like Wowhead, though there are others. And in the tier lists, I'm going to look up one of the tier lists that are used for either Raid or Mythic Plus. It doesn't matter too much which one you choose, or whether you choose tank healer or DPS. What matters is that you're picking a class and specialization that is in usually the upper half. The reason for this is these tend to be more popular, and as such, you will often have more customers and more demand. Alternatively, you can choose based on what you are playing yourself. I'm going to be choosing based on what I'm playing myself, and in that case, it is going to be an Elemental Shaman. When I select this, what I'll be doing is taking a look at the best in-slot gear that is recommended. In modern World of Warcraft, it is typical that there are going to be at least 2 items that are best in slot that are crafted. And if we look at the best in slot list, we can see that these are the World Tender's Bark Clasp and the World Tender's Root Slippers. Now for each individual player, these may not be the best thing. However, most players aren't willing to do the complicated mathematics or simming required to find the best items, and will default to what is in these lists. I do have a character that is set up to craft these items. However, if you don't, you can take a look at the recipe and instead look into how you can provide those items, because these items will also typically sell so that people can make it. So now we're going to go ahead and close the website and log into the character. The items that we're looking at are gear in this particular case. We also will look at other items that are not gear. Gear, as we discussed in the previous video, has 5 ranks, and most players, actually I'm going to say almost all players, will only be buying gear that is of the highest quality, maximum rank. So what I'm going to do is open up my leatherworking, and we are going to find that particular pattern. It is a mail armor piece, and there it is, the World Tender's Bark Clasp. What you'll notice is that in Craftsim, I have specialization info checked off. So if you don't see this little window, it may mean that you have to come up to the Craftsim menu and select it. And what you'll see is that it's listing off things like skill, resourcefulness, ingenuity, and concentration, as well as all sorts of different knowledge point nodes that you can spend knowledge points into. If I pop over to the specializations tab here, I can see those same nodes filled out. So I can see the bettering bands, I can see the advanced armor, the safeguarding scales, all of it. So if I pop back to the recipe, I can see that most of these nodes are filled out. And this is how I chose which nodes I'm going to be doing. Because gear is required to be 5 stars by the player base, skill is going to be the most important factor. These recipes are well balanced by Blizzard to require the highest quality materials and a crafter of essentially maximum skill in order to consistently achieve a rank 5 item. So all the nodes I filled out here were designed specifically for that. You'll notice there were other nodes here for other stats that I did not worry about. I'm going to discuss what each of these do, but in the context of a different item. It is absolutely useful to fill out these nodes individually for your crafter for this piece of gear, but it's not critical. So for gear, skill is king, and typically some of the other stats might be useful, but I don't worry as much about them. It is essentially just skill. So we're going to log back out. We're going to pop back to our website, and now we're going to look at consumables. In the consumables section, we can see a number of different things such as enchants, gems, spell threads, and if we keep scrolling down, there are also things like potions, augment runes, and food. All of these are things that are going to consistently be in demand over the course of the entire expansion, and therefore worthwhile to obtain or craft. In this particular case, I'm going to choose one of the epic items, the Sunfire Silk Spell Thread. As we can see, it is going to require a number of bolts of Sunfire Silk. So if I do not have the pattern to make the Sunfire Silk Spell Thread, I can focus on making the Sunfire Silk required, or obtaining any of the other materials. I'm just pointing out Sunfire Silk because I've already looked over these, and I'm already aware that that is the one that people are looking for. So now I'm going to log into a character in order to make those items. This is not the correct character. My apologies. Each of the other 3 stats related to crafting are all going to impact our ability to make Sunfire Silk Spell Threads. And I've selected this item specifically because each of the stats actually has a specific tangible value that we'll be able to see. So this is an item that I'm going to be needing each time I upgrade my leg slot, which isn't going to be too consistently, but consistently enough that being able to craft this is going to be useful. So now that we're logged in, I'm going to head over to the tailoring crafting table. And we are going to pop down until we can find that item, the Sunfire Silk Spell Thread. And we can see all the different items required here to craft it. We can see the cost to craft it and the profit. And over here on the right, we'll still see that I haven't quite filled out the skill, but there's a lot of other points I have gotten. For instance, my Multicraft is quite high, 75 out of 110. My extra items for Multicraft is here. All of this is higher. So let's discuss what each of these is going to do. And I'm going to start with Resourcefulness. So when crafting, almost every single item is going to have a resourcefulness percentage listed along the right-hand side. What this means is each and every time I make one of the items, that chance will be rolled, and if it procs, it is going to refund a certain percentage of the reagents. The default is between 1 and 3 randomly chosen items at 25%, but there are ways to improve that. For each individual item that you're crafting, it will be rolled even if you select the craft all button. So if you're crafting 6, you might get resourcefulness procs on 2 or 1, or with my pitiful 5%, likely none of them. Now, resourcefulness is very useful when a craft requires mostly high value materials. This is very common in jewel crafting and a few other professions, but mostly jewel crafting. However, with tailoring, since a number of these items are very inexpensive, in fact, it looks like half of them, maybe more, are very inexpensive, the value from resourcefulness is much smaller. It's not useless, but it's not great. So I will be getting it, it's just not a priority. As you can see, there is some extra points I can put into, say, textile utilization that will give me resourcefulness, and we'll be doing that at some point in the future. Next, we're going to discuss multicrafting. Multicrafting is effectively a chance to produce extra items. If an item is stackable, meaning that in your inventory you can have multiple copies of it, occupying a single item slot, multicraft will likely apply to it. There are some exceptions, but there are very few. Multicraft essentially means that when you make one or more of the items, there's a chance that the game will act as though you have created multiple copies of it simultaneously. This is equivalent to having a Resourcefulness proc that refunds all the materials for an additional craft, and not spending any concentration on the additional crafts if you needed to spend some. So typically the value of Multicraft is not going to be based on the cost of the reagents, but the value of the final product. In this case, we're looking at 5,500 gold for a 1-star copy of the final product, and more for the 2-star. I don't believe the tooltip will update for that, so we shall see. So Multicraft is exceptionally good for an item like this, because each proc takes that combination of high and low value resources and gives it to us. It's a much lower chance, so it tends to be a bit more of a slot machine, but the payout is much, much better. The last one I want to discuss is Ingenuity. Ingenuity is essentially a currency that characters accumulate at a rate of 10 per hour that can be spent to make up for the missing skill points to craft a better item. Skill points come from the skill you have, the knowledge points you have, and the quality of the materials you're using. So this means that you can not worry about having sufficient skill, or you can not worry about having high quality items and still make a high quality result. So Ingenuity essentially lets you increase the value of that concentration. Anytime that a craft requires reagents that are very cheap if they are low quality materials and very expensive if they're high quality materials, such as these Sunfire Silk Bolts, Ingenuity is going to be exceptionally useful. And because it is a time-gated resource, that value is not something that will go away over the course of an expansion. This will always maintain some level of value. So as you can see, Ingenuity hasn't been a heavy focus, but we have been working on it. So we absolutely will be getting more Ingenuity so that we can take more of our very, very cheap Sunfire Silk Bolts and turn them into high quality Sunfire Silk spell threads. Now we've talked about skill. We've covered all the secondary stats. I've showed you how I decide which items I make. This should give you all the tools you need to decide how you want to spend your knowledge points. So, until I talk to you all again, I hope that this leads to a very profitable expansion for you. Take care.